I trusted my mother more than anyone in the world. I let her into my marriage, my home, my finances, even my heart. When my husband started acting distant, she was the one who held my hand and told me I was overthinking. When I cried at night, she whispered, "All marriages go through rough patches." When I asked if something felt off, she smiled and said, "You're lucky to have a man like Daniel." What she didn't tell me was that she was helping him betray me. She introduced him to the woman who would replace me. She hid their messages. She covered for his late nights. And when I finally confronted them, she stood beside him, not me. Then came the pregnancy. A baby that everyone said would save my marriage. Everyone celebrated, while I was pushed out of my own home. I lost my husband. I lost my family. And overnight, I lost everything I owned, because the woman who stole it all was my own mother. But here's the thing they didn't know. While they were celebrating my downfall, I was quietly collecting proof. Messages, documents, recordings. Evidence that showed this wasn't a mistake, it was a plan. And by the time they realized who they were really dealing with, it was already too late. The first time I realized something was wrong, it wasn't because I caught my husband cheating. It was because my own mother looked me in the eye and lied to me, without hesitation. Daniel had been coming home late for weeks. Not suspiciously late, just late enough that I started noticing, but not enough to confront him without feeling irrational. An hour here, 2 hours there. When I asked him, he blamed work stress, client dinners, deadlines I didn't understand. I wanted to believe him. I always had. But what unsettled me wasn't Daniel. It was Evelyn. My mother. She started showing up more often. Unannounced. With food. With advice I hadn't asked for. She'd sit across from me, stir her tea slowly, and watch me the way she used to when I was a child who had done something wrong, but didn't know it yet. "Natalia," she said one evening, her voice soft, "you've changed." I blinked. Changed how? You're tense. Defensive. Men notice that. Daniel probably feels like he's walking on eggshells. It was subtle, the kind of cut that didn't bleed, but made you question yourself. From that moment on, it became routine. Every time Daniel disappointed me, my mother had an explanation ready. Every time I felt hurt, she reframed it as my fault. When he forgot our anniversary, she said, "You shouldn't pressure him with expectations." When he stopped touching me, she said, "Men pull away when they feel criticized." When I cried, she whispered, "Natalia, don't push him into someone else's arms." I didn't know then that she was already holding the door open. The night everything cracked open happened on a Tuesday. Ordinary. Forgettable. The kind of day you never imagine will change your life. Daniel had left his phone on the kitchen counter when he went to shower. It buzzed once. Then again. I wasn't snooping, I was annoyed. Whoever it was, they were persistent. I glanced down. The name on the screen wasn't saved. Just a message preview. "She suspects nothing. Your mom says we're safe." My stomach dropped. Your mom. I froze, heart pounding so loud I thought Daniel might hear it through the bathroom door. I didn't open the phone. I didn't touch it. I just stared at it, hoping reality would rearrange itself into something that made sense. It didn't. When Daniel came out, towel around his waist, I was sitting at the table. "You look pale," he said. "Who's Lena?" I asked. The silence that followed was too clean. Too rehearsed. "She's a friend," he said. "From work." "And my mom?" I pressed. His eyes flicked away for half a second. That was all it took. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just stood, grabbed my keys, and walked out before my legs gave out beneath me. I drove straight to my mother's house. She was waiting. Calm. Prepared. That should have terrified me. But I was too numb to notice. She poured me water, sat me down, touched my hand. And then she said, with the quiet precision that would haunt me forever, "I was hoping you'd come." I knew. I asked her directly. No softness. No fear left to protect me. "How long have you known about Lena?" She didn't deny it. She didn't apologize. She sighed, as if I were exhausting her. "Natalia," she said, "Daniel has needs. And you've been distant." Something inside me shattered. "You helped him," I whispered. "I protected him," she corrected. "And honestly, I protected you too. If you hadn't been so emotional, this never would have escalated." I laughed, a sharp, broken sound that didn't feel like me. "You introduced them," I said. She hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "Yes," she admitted. "But that doesn't mean what you think it means." She explained it like a strategy. Like a solution. Daniel had complained about feeling lonely. She had suggested he talk to someone who understood men better. Lena was younger. Kinder. Temporary. That was the word she used, temporary. "You were supposed to work on yourself," my mother said. "Instead, you became suspicious. Paranoid. You forced this. Forced this." I stood so fast the chair scraped against the floor. "You betrayed me," I said. She didn't flinch. "I chose what was best for this family," she replied. "And right now, you're the one tearing it apart." It hit me then, the most dangerous thing about my mother wasn't her lies. It was that she truly believed them. When I left her house that night, I wasn't just losing my marriage. I was losing the last illusion I had of a mother who loved me more than control. And deep inside, beneath the pain, the disbelief, the confusion, something else began to form. Not forgiveness. Not acceptance. Something quieter. Something patient. Something far more dangerous. I remember the first time I met Daniel. It wasn't love at first sight, love didn't exist yet, but there was an ease, a quiet warmth I hadn't known I needed. He was the kind of man who could listen without interrupting, who made me feel like the room belonged just to us. I had been wary of men before him. Too many treated me like I was fragile, like I was just an accessory in their lives. But Daniel, he made me feel strong. He made me laugh. And when he said he wanted a future together, I believed him completely. Then there was my mother, Evelyn. She wasn't just a mother, she was a strategist disguised as care. Elegant, sharp, terrifyingly clever. Every mistake I made as a child, every choice I considered, she would shape with a subtle pressure I didn't even notice. But I loved her. I trusted her. I thought she truly saw me. When Daniel and I got married, Evelyn was insistent. Protective. Almost suffocating. She offered advice at every turn, guided us through purchases, disagreements, and even subtly monitored our social lives. I welcomed it, naively thinking she had my best interests at heart. I thought it was love. I thought it was care. I worked tirelessly for our future. I helped Daniel grow professionally, investing quietly in Hartwell Consulting, our family business. I poured myself into our home at Hartwell Heights, ensuring it was a sanctuary. And I took care of the Silver Lake House, our retreat, thinking it would be a place for family gatherings and memories. Every move I made was for the life I believed we were building together. But somewhere along the way, the line between guidance and control blurred. Evelyn was never just a mother. She was a manipulator. She, coincidentally, appeared whenever Daniel seemed distant. Her comments about how fragile relationships could be were subtle warnings, designed to make me doubt myself. Even Lena, the woman who would eventually replace me, was introduced under my mother's pretense of friendship. I remember the first time she came over. Evelyn practically pushed her into our lives, presenting her as fun and charming, a new friend for Daniel. I was polite, maybe too polite, but I didn't see the undercurrent. I didn't realize at the time that I was being set up. Looking back, it's horrifying how carefully it was orchestrated. Every word, every gesture, every insignificant interaction was calculated to destabilize me, to create doubt, to make me feel powerless, not in my marriage, not in my household, not even in myself. And the financial side, that was the part one never saw coming. I trusted Evelyn with the Hart family trust, the assets she had promised to safeguard. I proudly showed her the Silver Lake Lakehouse deed, believing she would be proud. Little did I know, every document, every investment, every ounce of trust one gave her could, and eventually would, be used against me. In retrospect, that's where the first seeds of revenge were planted. Not consciously. Not yet. But slowly, I started noticing patterns. The subtle manipulation, the casual overreach, the way she subtly positioned Lena. Evelyn's power was immense, and if I learned to fight, it could be turned against her. Even now, thinking about it, I realize how love blinded me. I almost thanked her at the time. Almost. She made me feel like a fragile wife who needed guidance. I didn't know she was shaping the narrative so that I would be easy to discard. And yet, in this moment of reflection, I didn't even know how broken I would become before understanding the full scope of their betrayal. The backstory was clear to me only in fragments, moments of a life carefully manipulated, but it would take months before I could piece together the truth. The real revelation, the one that would almost destroy me entirely, was still waiting just around the corner. I remember the day I realized how completely I had been deceived. It started with a call from Daniel. His voice was flat, polite, rehearsed, the same tone he always used for bad news. But this time, it wasn't just rehearsed. It was calculated. I drove to Hartwell Heights, my stomach twisting in ways I hadn't felt since I was a teenager caught in my first lie. The moment I stepped inside, I knew something had shifted. The air was too clean. Too organized. Too staged. There was Lena. Sitting on the couch. Smiling like she belonged there. And Daniel, sitting beside her, holding her hand as if I didn't exist. I froze. Words failed me. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it would echo through the walls. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. Natalia, Daniel said carefully, we need to be honest with each other. Honest? That word felt like a slap. My voice wouldn't come. My authority, my life, all of it, had been stripped in one meticulously orchestrated moment. And then it hit me. It wasn't just Daniel. It wasn't just Lena. It was my mother, Evelyn. She had orchestrated this entire scene. Every late night. Every excuse. Every casual comment that made me doubt myself. Every bit of trust one had given her, it had all been a trap. I sank to the floor. I didn't cry immediately. I couldn't. My mind spun through every moment, every memory, every tiny misstep that might have caused this. Where did I go wrong? Was I too trusting? Too naive? Too focused on keeping everyone happy while ignoring the subtle warnings? I replayed every conversation in my head. Every helpful suggestion Evelyn had made. Every word of praise that hid criticism. She had poisoned my perception of reality so slowly that I didn't even see the line being crossed, until it was too late. And Daniel, the man I believed would fight for me, who I had trusted with everything, who had smiled at me the night we closed on Hartwell Heights, he hadn't just cheated. He had abandoned me, with the approval of my own mother. I felt hollow. Disoriented. Like I was floating outside my own body, watching my life unravel. Every thought I had about trust, family, love, and security had been weaponized against me. I wanted answers. I wanted confrontation. But I knew, speaking wouldn't stop it. Daniel and Lena weren't ashamed. Evelyn wasn't guilty. There was no remorse. Only precision. Only strategy. Only cruelty. The hardest part was realizing I had been blind. My mother had always been the smartest person in the room. And I had trusted her completely. Now, she had everything: the narrative, the control, the sympathy of everyone who mattered. And I had nothing. I wandered through our empty home that night. Hartwell Heights felt like a museum dedicated to my failure. Every photograph, every gift, every signed document was a reminder of how thoroughly I had been outmaneuvered. I felt like I was drowning, not just in Daniel's betrayal or Lena's presence, but in the deeper betrayal of Evelyn. The woman who had raised me, taught me to trust, taught me what love meant, she had weaponized it. And as I sat there, alone, replaying every moment, the final horrifying realization hit me: this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a lapse in judgment. It was deliberate, methodical, planned with cold precision. I was broken. Not physically. But every corner of my mind, every part of my heart that had trusted, hoped, and believed, was fractured. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. I wanted to disappear. But there was no escape from the truth. Evelyn had calculated every move to leave me here. Helpless. Humiliated. Alone. And yet, deep beneath the pain and disbelief, a small, tentative thought began to form. They think I am finished. They think I am powerless. They are wrong. I couldn't sleep that night. My mind was a battlefield, shards of disbelief, anger, and fear cutting through every attempt at calm. I kept seeing the message on Daniel's phone over and over. She suspects nothing. Your mom says we're safe. I had to know. I had to understand how deep it went. The next morning, I started small. Subtle questions to friends, colleagues, even casual conversations with Lena herself. I didn't confront, didn't accuse, yet. I just watched. I listened. I collected. And that's when the first cracks appeared. Lena had been speaking too freely around mutual friends, dropping phrases like, Daniel will be thrilled. Mom said everything is fine. The way she spoke wasn't casual. It was rehearsed. Too smooth. Too controlled. I started looking for patterns. Checking emails, receipts, and social media interactions. Slowly, horrifyingly, I began to notice inconsistencies. Daniel had supposedly been traveling for work when Lena claimed she had her first doctor's appointment. The dates didn't match. The so-called ultrasound photos she posted online, identical to stock images from a medical website. I cross-referenced the metadata. It didn't match her story. My stomach twisted. Every conversation I could recover from Daniel, every casual slip from Lena, every advice from Evelyn, they all pointed to the same conclusion: the pregnancy wasn't real. It was a fabrication. My mother had orchestrated it perfectly. She had manipulated everyone around me, the family, friends, Daniel, even Lena herself, to make me believe I was losing my husband to a new life. A replacement for me. The realization hit me like a punch to the chest. Not only had they stolen my marriage, they had created a false narrative so believable that even I had been convinced, for months. I remembered every forced smile, every congratulations I endured, every time I pushed down the fear in my chest while everyone celebrated a lie. The betrayal wasn't just emotional anymore. It was structural. They had built a world around deception, and I had unknowingly invested in it, emotionally, financially, and socially. I started keeping records. Screenshots, messages, photos, every piece of evidence I could find that proved the deception. I even began quietly tracking their interactions, noting how they reinforced the lie. Every detail mattered. Every small piece of proof was a weapon waiting to be wielded. And as I worked through the night, my disbelief began to shift. The numbness, the shock, the self-blame, they started to transform. I wasn't powerless anymore. I had proof. I had an understanding. I realized something terrifying, but in the best possible way. They thought I was at my lowest. They thought I was too stunned to act. But the deeper I dug, the more I realized every lie they had built left a trail. And every trail was mine to follow. By the time the sun rose, I had a plan forming. Not vague, not abstract, something precise. A way to protect myself, confront the truth, and turn their carefully constructed world against them. Step 1 was simple but powerful: knowledge. I had it now. The false pregnancy, the lies, the manipulation. Everything I needed to reclaim control, and to start thinking about the revenge they had thought impossible. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt alive. I couldn't confront them, not yet. Not until I had every piece of the puzzle. Any misstep, any premature move, and all the proof I had painstakingly collected would be useless. I started with Daniel. I stopped trusting his words completely, but I observed. Every glance, every hesitation, every carefully constructed lie became ammunition. He was confident, smug even, thinking I was too stunned, too shattered to act. But I was learning. Every small slip he made added a layer to the strategy forming in my mind. Next, Lena. I didn't speak to her directly, but I tracked her interactions. I noticed the rehearsed mannerisms, the way she looked to Evelyn for approval before answering questions. She had been molded to fit a role, obedient and careful. Perfect. Until I planned to break her. And then Evelyn. Oh, Evelyn. She was confident, unshakable, believing she had thought of everything. Every word, every action had been deliberate. And she had underestimated me. I started building a timeline of all their deceptions. Phone messages. Fake appointments. Manipulated friends and colleagues. The false pregnancy. All of it mapped out like a blueprint of betrayal. I photographed documents, stored every message in a secure digital vault. Every step I would take against them had to be calculated and undeniable. While I was doing this, I subtly protected myself. I changed passwords, secured my financial accounts, ensured Daniel couldn't access anything without me knowing. I quietly met with a lawyer, someone discreet, someone I could trust, just to explore my options. I didn't mention my mother or Lena. I just asked about assets, property transfers, and rights in cases of fraud and manipulation. Every piece of knowledge I gained strengthened my resolve. By the end of the first week, one realization became crystal clear: they were still playing their game, completely unaware that the board had shifted. Evelyn thought I was broken. Daniel thought I was naive. Lena thought I was helpless. And yet, in reality, I was observing them like a hawk. Every move they made became predictable. I began imagining the steps I would take. Small moves at first, tightening my legal control, securing my assets, planting seeds of doubt where necessary, but each step had a purpose. The revenge wasn't abstract, it was precise. Calculated. And then came the most satisfying realization: the false pregnancy. That lie, which had caused me months of pain, fear, and humiliation, would now become my weapon. Once revealed strategically, it would dismantle the narrative Evelyn and Lena had built, and expose Daniel as a willing participant. I began writing down every conversation, every message, every encounter. The lies were obvious now. The proof of manipulation, coercion, and betrayal stacked up like bricks. For the first time since this nightmare began, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was cold. Precise. Dangerous. They had underestimated me. They had assumed I was powerless. They had no idea what was coming. Because now, I wasn't just protecting myself. I was preparing. I was planning. I was waiting. For the first time, I realized revenge wasn't just about justice, it was about reclaiming every ounce of power they had stolen from me. Evelyn, Daniel, Lena, they had thought they had won. But I was already 3 moves ahead. And this was only the beginning. The first move I made wasn't loud. It wasn't emotional. It was surgical. I stopped reacting. That alone changed everything. When Daniel spoke, I listened without interrupting. When Evelyn called, I answered calmly. When Lena smiled at me like she'd won, I smiled back, just enough to make her comfortable. Comfort makes people careless. And careless people leave trails. Then I started with the paperwork. One evening, while organizing documents I hadn't touched in months, I noticed something unusual. A confirmation email. Old. Buried. A notification about an account update linked to the Hart Family Trust. I hadn't authorized anything recently, but the timestamp said otherwise. I logged in. And that was the moment the floor gave out beneath me. Transfers. Multiple ones. Clean. Legal looking. Executed weeks ago. My share in Hartwell Consulting, reduced. The Silver Lake House, no longer under my name. Even the ownership of Hartwell Heights, altered. I felt sick. I checked the authorization logs. The signature wasn't forged. It was mine. Or rather, a version of mine. A power of attorney document I had signed years earlier. A document Evelyn had insisted I sign, just in case something ever happens to you. A document I had trusted her with because she was my mother. She had used it. Not impulsively. Not in panic. Deliberately. Sitting there, staring at the screen, I felt something go cold inside me. This wasn't betrayal born from chaos or passion. This was calculated theft. Planned months in advance, possibly years. They hadn't just replaced me. They had erased me. But I wasn't frozen anymore. I had clarity. The next morning, I made my second move. I met my lawyer again, this time armed with evidence. Messages showing coordination between Evelyn and Daniel. Financial records showing abuse of power of attorney. Evidence of asset manipulation during marital conflict. And most importantly, timestamps proving intent. My lawyer didn't interrupt me once. When I finished, she leaned back. They've committed multiple violations. And they assumed you wouldn't notice, she said. That was all the confirmation I needed. From that moment, revenge was no longer just an idea. It was a process. Step 1, I froze what I could without alerting them. Subtle holds. Requests framed as routine audits. Enough to slow them down, but not enough to tip them off. Step 2, I let them get comfortable again. Evelyn called me that week, her voice sweet, almost proud. She told me Daniel and Lena were doing well, and that I should focus on healing instead of clinging to the past. I thanked her. I told her she was right. She believed me. Daniel, meanwhile, grew careless. Spending money like he'd already won. Promises to Lena that things would be official soon. New clothes, new cars, new plans. I documented everything. Every slip, every careless move. Because while they thought the game was over, I was only beginning. The false pregnancy, that devastating lie, would become my ultimate weapon. It had caused me months of fear and humiliation. Now, it was proof of their manipulation, a trap that would collapse their narrative entirely. And I smiled. Not a joyful smile. A cold, precise, dangerous one. They had underestimated me. They assumed I was powerless. They had no idea what was coming. Because now, I wasn't just protecting myself. I was executing the plan. I was turning the tables. I was reclaiming everything. And when it was done, they would understand what it meant to lose control. The moment I knew it was time wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. Evelyn had invited the family over for a small announcement. Daniel had been glowing for days, strutting around like a man who believed the future was already handed to him. Lena was insufferable, touching her stomach theatrically, soaking in sympathy, playing the role my mother had written for her. They thought this night would seal my erasure. They were wrong. I arrived calm. Well-dressed. composed. That alone unsettled Evelyn. She expected me broken, withdrawn, ashamed. Instead, I sat down like someone who belonged there, because I did. The room was silent as Evelyn stood first. She spoke about family, about sacrifice, about how difficult decisions sometimes have to be made for the greater good. She praised Daniel's honesty and Lena's courage. Then she turned to me. "Natalia," she said softly, "I hope one day you'll understand why things had to happen this way." That was my cue. I stood up. "I do understand," I said calmly. "That's why I invited a few people tonight." The room froze. I nodded toward the door. My lawyer walked in first. Then another. Then a man from the bank. Finally, someone Evelyn never expected to see again, her former legal advisor, thought to be retired quietly. Evelyn's face drained of color. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "I know about the power of attorney," I said. "I know about the trust amendments. I know about the coordinated asset transfers. And I know exactly when you executed them, during an active marital conflict, while conspiring with my husband." Daniel stood up. "Natalia, this is insane." I turned to him. "Sit down." He did. I laid everything out. Step by step. Slowly. Clearly. Every message between him and Evelyn. Every instruction she gave him. Every financial move they thought I'd never notice. The false pregnancy evidence came next, the stock ultrasound images, the mismatched timelines, the medical confirmations that never existed. Lena's smile collapsed first. She whispered, "Evelyn, you said." Evelyn didn't look at her. I continued. "The transfers have already been reversed," I said. "The accounts are frozen. Hartwell Consulting is back under my control. So is Hartwell Heights. And the Silver Lake House? That's now part of an active fraud investigation." Daniel's knees buckled. He actually sat back down, his body surrendering before his mind caught up. Evelyn tried to speak. Nothing came out. Then she cried. Not quietly. Not gracefully. She sobbed, loud, shaking, desperate. She reached for me like I was still her daughter, like she hadn't planned my destruction with surgical precision. "I did this for you," she said through tears. "For the family." I stepped back. "You did this for control," I said. "And now you have none." Daniel started begging next. Apologies poured out, messy, panicked, meaningless. Promises. Regret. Love he suddenly remembered he had for me now that the money was gone. I didn't respond. Lena finally understood. She turned to Daniel. "You told me we were set. You told me she'd get nothing." He didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. By the end of the night, everything had collapsed. Evelyn was facing lawsuits and investigations. Daniel was financially ruined, exposed, and abandoned. Lena left with nothing, no pregnancy, no future, no one willing to claim her. And me? I walked out with my head high. I didn't feel joy. I felt justice. They had cried. They had begged. They had lost. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I finally felt the weight lift off my chest. I hadn't just survived them. I had defeated them, completely. The first few weeks after everything collapsed were quiet. Too quiet. I didn't rush. I didn't celebrate. I simply walked through the ruins they had left behind, slowly reclaiming what was mine. Hartwell Heights, Hartwell Consulting, Silver Lake House, all back under my name. The Hart Family Trust dismantled and secured. Every asset, every document, every investment that Evelyn and Daniel had tried to steal was now untouchable. For the first time in months, I felt safe. But safety alone wasn't enough. I had been broken, humiliated, and almost erased. I wanted more than that. I wanted a life rebuilt stronger than ever. A life where no one could ever take control from me again. I started small. Late nights in my office at Hartwell Consulting, reviewing contracts, securing new clients, restructuring internal teams. I had invested years quietly into this company, and now I had full control. Every move I made was strategic. Every decision counted. I reconnected with old friends I had pushed aside during the chaos, people who had always supported me quietly. Their support reminded me that loyalty still existed outside of betrayal, and it gave me the courage to dream bigger. A year later, the change was visible. Hartwell Consulting had grown exponentially under my leadership. The Silver Lake House was no longer just a retreat, it was an investment property generating substantial income. Hartwell Heights had appreciated far beyond what I had imagined. Financially, I was untouchable. Emotionally, I was stronger than ever. And then, unexpectedly, life offered a new kind of hope. A former friend, someone who had always supported me quietly, reached out. We reconnected. Slowly, naturally, like a puzzle piece sliding into place. There was no pressure, no rush. Just respect, trust, and laughter that felt like it healed parts of me I hadn't realized were broken. Romance wasn't about replacing Daniel or anyone else. It was about rediscovering myself. And through this friendship-turned relationship, I began to see that life could offer joy again, not stolen, not manipulated, but earned. I also started pursuing dreams I had set aside. I launched new business ventures, invested in passions I had ignored during the years of betrayal, and watched them grow. Every success was a reminder that I was no longer a pawn in someone else's game. By the time 2 years had passed, I had become unrecognizable, not just to them, but even to myself. The Natalia who cried alone in Hartwell Heights was gone. In her place stood someone resilient, powerful, and unapologetically independent. And as for Evelyn, Daniel, and Lena, I didn't need to watch them suffer, they had learned their lessons. Their greed, arrogance, and cruelty had been their own undoing. And I had never been happier that my revenge had been precise, clean, and final. I had rebuilt everything, financially, emotionally, spiritually. I had reclaimed my life. And I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I would never let anyone steal my power again. Not a husband. Not a mother. Not anyone. I had survived the ultimate betrayal. And now, I was unstoppable.